So you're a lot like me and you've bought these Tokyo Marui high cap mags and you're having trouble getting them to feed properly. I was pretty ticked off about it. I bought 4 of them and was having some pretty unsatisfactory results. So I sat around and thought of some different ways and got some other ideas off the internet to try and help us all out with these. Just going to talk about the problems first that you have with these things. First of all, there's friction problems in the charging wheel here. So I'm going to show you that in a minute, how we're going to fix that. So we're going to try to reduce friction there. Another problem that I see is that this little bumper that sits on this side, you can't really see it that well, but those of you that are familiar with these mags know what I'm talking about. We're going to make that spring a little less effective there, so that maybe if BB does need to move that a little bit, that it can. Might not matter a whole lot, but I did it anyway. Another problem, probably the major problem here, is that BBs will come down in here, and I've seen some other solutions for this on the internet. BBs will come down into this area, and what happens is as this cogwheel turns, it forces all the BBs that are stacked in here to rise, and then it has to come back forward. So, this wheel and the spring that's in the charging spindle here has to work a lot harder, not only just to turn the BBs that are in here, but it has to back all this up in the spring force that's behind it. So I'm going to show you in just a few seconds some ways that I'm going to do that. What you're going to need to do it my way is to get you just some small zip ties. You can see how I've cut this. I'll show it a little bit better in a little bit and what you've got to do with it. Just some good lube. Get you some good silicone lube and some super glue, and we should be able to get your mags performing a lot better. First thing I'll show you is this. If we just take this, I'm calling it the charging spindle out, and the little plastic gear that's down below it. And this has to spin on top of that, just like that. So it kind of charges up, and when it needs to rotate the cog, it spins it loose. So what we want to do is reduce any friction here. I've actually taken a Dremel and polished 2 of my other mags. It seems to have worked really well. And I've got the other 2. I'm going to just simply put some silicone spray on there and see what that does. So I think either way, I think you're going to come out a little bit better. And it's really just this ridge right around here that it really rides on. So that'd be the first thing that I'd want to do, is just make sure that that's lubed up in the same way with the other side, so that when you put that back in there, everything glides really well. Aside from that, of course, just putting a thin layer of silicone on anything that might slide past one another in the mag. So I kind of lube everything real lightly and allow that to dry. Alright, and the other thing would be the spring that I mentioned on the back. Alright, so now we're looking on the back here. We see where this screw is, and this spring actually runs up to the inside in here. And now you can see where I bent this spring. I just took some needle nose pliers and just grabbed it right there and twisted it a little bit. But you can see now the difference, I hope so, where it's actually bent and will rest against the outer shell instead of the inner shell. So now we've lubed everything inside the mag. Like I just use a Q-tip. I rub everything down, everything in between there, just to try to get that sliding better, and underneath this as well. You want to do that. And now all that's taken care of, let's get down to the meat of this thing. And what's probably the major problem here is the BBs that slide down into the side. So what I do is I take a zip tie and I cut it about like this, and instead of giving you lengths, I'm just going to kind of show you how this works. You just want to cut it where it clears this, the cogwheel, and it fits right inside here. So, and fit right in between the inner casing and the outer casing of the magazine. So just some things to help you out. If you'll look at this, okay, where you can see it real good. If you see the black, I just take my Dremel and I kind of shave that off. And the reason why I do that is because this sits right here, and that black part gets shaved off. And then you look at this, and you've got these little locking tabs that are right here. And so I'll shave off that little bit on there, and then I'll shave off half of this little locking tab. I'll just take it right off. You can take it off with a knife. Same way with that. Just be careful. That way this could go back together. So wanted to show you what I was just talking about. You can see here this tab maybe where it's shaved back. Just took a little bit of that off right there. And then also you can see on the zip tie, I just ground that off with this Dremel. You could do it with a knife probably, but Dremel's pretty easy with the little sanding wheel. Alright, so let's put this thing together. And just as I'm doing this, something that I have found, I used the other two mags pretty extensively for a couple of days, and probably put about 5,000 rounds through the other two mags. And the way that I treated them was that if for any reason, it's that dreaded sound if you use these where you hear the whole thing unwinding. And if you hear that, I just treated it like an empty mag. It's time to switch. There's no need pulling it off and running to another one. I probably still got 100 or more rounds out of the magazine before that ever happened. And it would probably happen about one in every 6 magazines full. Most other ones would run completely out, whereas I couldn't get these to feed at all before. So as we're putting this together, I just want you to see that I'm going to put a little super glue in this just to make sure it stays put. Just going to drop a little in there. Don't want that going anywhere. I don't think it would, but what the heck. Let's just make sure it's done right. I'm just going to slide this in. And this has been done, for better or worse, it's been done with some types of putty and stuff. You can look around on the internet and find those solutions. Not bad, but I kind of wanted something that was non-destructive, or something that I knew wasn't going to turn loose, in the middle of the day. And I just thought this would accomplish the same purpose, and you'll have a BB that'll just sit right in there, and the rest of them will just glide right around it. And the ramp idea of putting some putty in here and making a little ramp, that seems okay. It just didn't seem like it was something that would stay to me. So I just went with this option instead. But one thing you can see what happens here is that the BB just can't get down in there. And I have had a lot of success with this. And I just adjust it to where it's just kind of close, where it just barely, I don't know if you can see that, but it just barely gets by it. And I haven't had one of these fall out of here yet. I've just done a good job, I guess, of getting it in there where it won't go anywhere. So this is pretty much it. I just take a little bit of glue, I drop right down in there, and I normally drop a little just right against that wall, and that should dry once things get going. Things put together, and yeah, you shouldn't get this stuff on your skin, but here I am doing it. I just don't want the mag to be glued together. Slide this right down on there. We'll put the screws in. Again, you might want to let it dry just a little bit right here, and then put a little glue in there, and then finally put the mag together. Put the mag back together. Don't over tighten these two screws. If you over tighten them, it's going to basically clench this and the whole mechanism, but the charging spindle won't be able to work properly. So just